So, with so many people in NYC, why is it so lonely? This is my experience. There are three reasons for why people choose to move to New York City. It's either to make money, to become famous, or to go to school. To this day, I have never heard someone say something like, let's pick up our life and make a family in New York City. These are words that I don't normally hear. I'm sure someone out there somewhere has said, I want to make a family in New York City. I'm sure. I've just never heard it. Those first three reasons are the only reasons that I've seen in the sort of 12 years that I spent in New York. And now I keep going back every now and then as it's my base. New York City is a hustler city. It celebrates burn culture. What I mean by that is time runs while you walk. Time is running while you're just strolling along. And then the flip side of that is it completely disappears when you are hustling. Time just evaporates, like you're on some kind of Marvel Universe show. Time just disappears while you're hustling. It's burn culture. Burn culture. Because of that culture, socializing for fun, it's nearly impossible. You have 8 hours for sleep, if even. Then you have 8 hours to work, if you're lucky. Then you have 2 hours for commuting, which is probably not very generous, to be honest. It's more maybe like 3 or 4. And then you have supposedly this kind of like 6 hours left. Those 6 hours, they get eaten up by one of those first three categories. You didn't get enough sleep, so you had to get sleep some other time. Your work is never 8 hours. You spend a little bit more. If you have a field like mine in foreign affairs, it's never going to be 8 hours. You're working something closer to 10, 12, 14, something like that. And then the commuting in New York. New York is notoriously famous for having one of the worst public transportation systems out there in a developed Western country. One of the worst transportation systems I have ever seen. And I have lived and traveled all over this world. I mean, places that are labeled as developing economies have better transportation systems, public transportation systems than New York City. I, I don't know. I just don't know. I'm thinking of Ecuador at the moment. You have a developing economy here, developing. And Cuenca, where I lived, one of the best transportation systems I have ever seen. One of the best. Reliable to a fault. Anyways, so because New York City has such terrible transportation systems, those kind of 2 hours, the supposed 1 hour to get to your job, 1 hour to get back, 1 hour to get to destinations, it may not actually be like that. You might probably be taking on a few more minutes, like about 20 more minutes, because the train will break down or because MTA has some kind of problem up ahead that is mysteriously said in one of these MTA voices, or you have some idiot who decides to do something stupid on the train and then holds the train up for everyone. I mean, it's ridiculous. I don't even, I'm, no. Like I said, the hours that are parsed out for those first activities do not stay neatly situated in those designated 8 hour structure. Therefore, those 6 hours that you supposedly have left, plus the 2 hours for commuting, it's going to be eaten up by commuting errors. It's going to be eaten up by emergencies that you did not plan for, unforeseen detours, overtime for work. I mean, New York City it's burn culture. So, when it comes to socializing, what time do you have left for socializing? One time period, which was the first half of my junior year, I had like 6, 7, or 8 friends. And they're all international. The vast majority of them were from international schools. And we just clicked. We clicked really well. It was the first time in New York that I had found a group that I just felt so comfortable and so natural and at ease, and I didn't have to worry about racism and anything like that. I could just be myself. I could just be a person. I didn't have to be on guard 24/7. It was a short time period. I think it was like 9 months, and that was it. The next time period would be another very short-lived one, maybe for about a month. And it was a group of four of us, five of us, a group of five of us. Um, that one was also a nice time period. If you're not in school where you can see people that you like, your friends, on a day-to-day basis, then you're looking at this idea that you are scheduling time to have fun, almost like dating. You have to schedule time in order to see people that you want to spend time with. It's so difficult to just say, "Hey, I'm gonna come over for blah 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 blah," as though you were kids in school or though you were in college or university or whatever. This doesn't exist once you leave the confines and territory of university. The times when socializing does seem to take place, if you've gone to a party or house events, apartment events, whatever they call it, from what I've seen and experienced, socializing does not seem to be purely for recreational activity. Socializing always seemed to have an undercurrent of an ulterior motive, meaning what can be obtained by socializing with X person, almost like networking. Can this person get me here? Can this person get me there? Can this person introduce me to this person? Can this person get me for... It rarely feels as though you're socializing for the pleasure of enjoying a person's company. That is part of the whole New York City burn culture. You really are trying to get ahead in one of those three categories I mentioned at the beginning. You're trying to make money, you're going to school, or you're trying to become famous. So, all of these different elements become challenged because of the ulterior motive. There is no concept of unconditional friendship through most of the social systems that I've seen brewing in New York City, which creates an atmosphere of feeling very isolated and lonely. What would I call unconditional friendship? Your goal for interacting with X person is solely to enjoy their company and for the two of you to find mutual happiness in the process of enjoying each other's company. It is so rare to find that, and when you do find that, you know exactly what it is. If you've never found that, then it's very hard to understand what that looks like. So, having found that before in my life multiple times, I'm not really willing to settle. New York City doesn't build a structure in which that kind of trust is freely given. And it certainly has not built a structure in which, should you take advantage of that for whatever reason, only a fool would trust you again. Only a fool. New York City is a city that is built upon hustle money. And money has to be one of the most volatile substances I have ever seen in life. So once again, it creates the atmosphere of feeling isolated and lonely. That atmosphere I've seen, strangely enough, leads to isolation culture. And that kind of isolation culture becomes a form of practicing self-care. Days that you are not working, maybe it's the weekend or maybe you have a day off during the middle of the week. Instead of spending it doing something that would require getting to know people or spending time with others, what I have seen, it's an unhealthy type of introversion people lead themselves to follow. This introversion that I'm speaking about is a protective method to steer clear of the outside world, to kind of like disconnect from all sense of humanity in order to feel as though you have a moment to breathe, which induces this sense of loneliness. It's a very different approach to self-care that is healthy, I think, When you have healthy self-care, spending time alone is very beneficial. You get to learn a lot about yourself. You get to de-stress. You get to find ways to recharge and energize. Healthy introversion, spending time alone, that is a very different result than what I would see as antisocial behavior. Do you see what I'm saying? So when you have this culture that continues to build these social system blocks that creates this belief that you have to go inward and cut off yourself from society, it doesn't produce a healthy response of being recharged and energized. Instead, it produces this response of pushing yourself further into isolation, and that isolation compounds itself upon itself, creating the atmosphere of loneliness. And dear God, seeing what people do when they get to that degree of loneliness, we don't even need to go there. So, does that mean that New York City is a horrible place? Some people love it. Some people don't like it. When I first got to New York City, I absolutely loved it. I loved it. I was like, but I came from down south where we didn't have these kind of like tall buildings, and certainly never saw anything like that before. I mean, even in Jamaica, there really isn't that kind of flash and stuff. There's just nothing like it. New York City was pretty much the way that it's portrayed in like the 90s in films, like Home Alone, like this place of just absolute wonder. It was great. And then I grew up in New York, meaning I spent part of my 20s in New York City doing the whole hustle culture and said, nope, no, 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 no. I'm done. There are other parts in the world that I prefer to be in. New York City certainly got a challenge the more that I spent outside of the United States. So it is and it isn't an amazing place based upon what you're looking for. As a tourist city, you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. There is so much to do in New York City. I'm going to make a video shortly after this in preparation for the summer about all the free things that you can do in New York City. I think it's the best time to go to New York. It's summertime. I know it's high season, but it is the best. If you want to maximize spending as little money as possible, the most expensive thing will probably be that plane ticket. The second most expensive thing, if you don't know how to find accommodation that's cheap, is going to be the accommodation. And then after that, you can just do free. I mean, like free events. Food will be, I think food is possibly more expensive than accommodation if I'm calculating it properly, but I may not be. But those three categories are your biggest expenses for New York City. And then after that, you don't need to bleed your wallet. New York City gives, but I think it gives back to the population in terms of the events. I do think so. Fight me on that if you want. So yeah, if you're feeling a bit isolated or lonely in New York, depressed in New York, oh God, I've been there. I can understand it, especially being out of it. I can do the retrospection and see, oh, okay, this is what was going on, that kind of thing. But there are ways to combat it.